you have a lot of paintings in this show, which are some of us have never seen your painting work before. And you were speaking earlier about the golden rectangle, and I know that's an influence with and a structure behind these paintings. So can you talk to us about that?
I'd be happy to. The golden rectangle, to begin with, is a rectangle with very special proportions. And the proportions are roughly 1 to 1.612, or roughly 10 to 16, or 5 to 8. And one of the things I used to teach my students was the first thing you should figure out if you're going to draw or paint or produce a print or make a photograph is the dimensions of the piece are of your first consideration. After that, you figure out, should it be vertically or should it be horizontal? And the premise there is a wide horizontal piece is very soothing. A tall vertical piece produces tension. If you want tension in your painting, it should be logically taller than it is wide. And by contrast, if you want a placid, soothing painting, it should be wider than it is tall. But you shouldn't be dictated by the manufacturers of paper, canvas, or photographic paper. We've been brought up with 8 by 10, 10 by 12, 16 by 20, 20 by 24 as standard shapes and dimensions that we should work with. And it's not the case. The artist should determine that. That's the first determination I think an artist should make. So at one point I got involved with the golden rectangle, and I discovered that it is believed to be inherent in all human beings that these are the most pleasing proportions of any rectangle. And every civilization almost has produced work dealing with these proportions, whether they knew it exactly or not. They were producing roughly 5 by 8 proportions. So if you investigate the golden rectangle, you find that in architecture, Egyptian, Sumerian, Chinese, Islamic, Buddhist, Greek, Romanesque, Gothic, and 20th century architecture often uses these proportions. Le Corbusier in the 19th century and Mies van der Rohe in the 20th century really exploited the golden rectangle. The way you determine the rectangle is you draw a square, which is right here, and you bisect the square vertically or horizontally, but you bisect it so you have two identical rectangles. And then you draw a line diagonally from the center up to the corner of a square, and you have a squared plus b squared plus c squared, and you determine c squared with the Pythagorean theorem. And you drop that length down, go up vertically, strike a right angle across, and the square becomes a golden rectangle. Roughly a 5 by 8 relationship. So I started producing paintings using the golden rectangle as my starting point. And since I didn't want tension, I made them more horizontal than vertical. And this is the first one. And the title of this one is All That Glitters Is Not Golden, Leonardo. Da Vinci was one of the artists in the Renaissance that did a lot of work with the golden rectangle. And not only did he sometimes stretch his canvas to a golden rectangle proportions, but he would put figures where perhaps a crouching figure, their feet, a shoulder, an elbow, and the head would all touch borders of a golden rectangle within the painting. And he knew that visually, we may not see it obviously, but those proportions were being dictated by that figure. And it would make his painting more aesthetically successful. So on this painting, the overall dimensions are a golden rectangle. The red rectangle is a golden rectangle. The grid is golden rectangles, and this is not a golden rectangle. Thus the title, All That Glitters Is Not Golden, Leonardo, and this one has the gold on it. So that's where that comes in. I talked a little earlier about trying to solve social issues, and this painting is called Split Atoms or Close the Circus Down. And in Split Atoms or Close the Circus Down, I was living in a small town called Spring City, Pennsylvania. And across the river from where I lived, the Schuylkill River, was the Limerick Nuclear Generating Plant owned by Philadelphia Electric. There was a phobia, much like this coronavirus. All the people who could afford to leave Spring City had vacated. Most of the people left behind couldn't afford to leave. And I was there because it was the only real estate I could find that had enough space for me to produce my art and still survive. So in the background, it's not real obvious, but there are 3 cooling towers. They don't represent 3 Mile Island, but there's still 3 cooling towers outside this window. This purple is OSHA safety purple for radiation. This represents a nuclear explosion with OSHA safety purple again in the background. This is the circus. The circus is us. We want microwave ovens, we want cars, we want dishwashers, and the suggestion here is split atoms or close the circus down. Each one occupies the same amount of space within this golden rectangle, and each one is of equal value. Instead, what do? We burn coal. This painting is 2 golden rectangles side by side, separated by the central part of the window. And this panes are approximate golden rectangles.